Good afternoon, everybody. Feels like it's been an age since I've last spoken to all of you. It's so lovely to be back here on this Tuesday afternoon. Big welcome to all of you. And as always, folks, feel free to send those questions in here on the website, and I'll get to them as much as I can throughout the show. If you want to have a chat, just go onto the boma chat. And we'll go through as much as we can with you all for the next half an hour or so. And we've started off this afternoon at the beautiful Olifants River. He's been hanging out here for a little while now. It's a little deeper in the water, a little earlier. He was chasing off a saddle-billed stork that was hanging out by the river. I know some of you on the boma chat spotted that. I think Sicko spotted that. But a welcome to all of you. Amy, Sicko, Lucy. See, you guys have been busy on the boma chat this afternoon. Pleasure to have you all with us as usual. So as you know, folks, new program this week. The Boma Show will be live with you every Tuesday, 2:30 to 3 Central African time. And tomorrow at the same time, 2:30 to 3, we'll be doing our On Point show where Phil and I will be going through various topics. This week's topic is really all about Africam. We'll be chatting about the cameras, where we are in the world, production, and addressing any of your questions about how we bring the shows to you folks and how we keep the 24-hour live cams going. And each week we'll have a new topic to cover. But it's all about interaction, so we'd always love to have your input. And then, of course, on Thursday, will be Phil's show, The Hide. And it will also be half an hour, 2:30 to 3 o'clock. So we hope to see you all there. And we're always interested in your feedback on the shows, and be lovely to hear from you. So thank you again for joining us. Watching this Ellie just enjoying himself by the river. You can see how much lower the water levels are than they were just a couple of weeks ago. I think back to a month ago. At least half of that elephant's legs would be underwater. Not unusual for these areas to start losing water and things starting to dry up as we head into the end of the wet season. As we start heading into winter, things will definitely be dropping even more. Go down in Cape Town, the first big rains arriving this week. Interestingly, in South Africa, the southwestern part of the country have pretty much opposite climate to the northeastern part, where we have a Mediterranean type climate with very dry and hot summers, cold and wet winters, whereas up in the northeast, where we're coming to you from right now in the bush up around Kruger and the greater Kruger National Park area, we have much more of a tropical type climate with a wet summer season and a dry and warm winter. I know some of you have been on many game drives will tell me I'm crazy for saying it's warm in the bush in the winter. And while that is true, being on the open vehicle in the early mornings and late evenings, it can be pretty darn chilly, but during the day it will often get up to around 20 degrees Celsius, so pretty reasonable, certainly to our viewers from North America and Northern Europe. Just so peaceful watching this elephant by the waterhole today, or by the river, I'm sorry. It's not much more beautiful in the world than watching an elephant, beautiful wild African river like this. Not a vehicle or a person in sight. There's wonderful sounds from the bush as well. You can see those ears moving back and forth gently. Sicko, we've turned up our audio mics up as much as we can, so let us know if we coming through okay. I appreciate you all enjoy the sound of my voice, but I would prefer it not to be screeching in your ears. I think that's a little bit better now. I have to admit, I could quite easily stay with this elephant all afternoon, but let's have a little look around. We'll go on over to Tau and see what's happening on that side. Always a pleasure to head over to Tau, see the diversity that we get there. Got our plains or Birchall zebra down there in the background. See another little group off in distance there as well. You can see all the zebra just trying to manage their heat. As we go into autumn now, the temperatures in the late afternoon, as things start to dry out a little and we don't get these cooling thunder showers in the afternoon as is so common in the summer, we get these much more hot afternoons and things really starting to dry out. Fortunately, zebra are able to handle that better than many species. If you look carefully on the left, you can actually see that young foal was nursing just a moment ago. Everything looking quite peaceful at the moment here at Tau. Don't see any other major species around. I know our crocs have been around. They were around the whole of last week. But we can come back to that in a moment. Let's head on over to Naledi Dam. I know some of you mentioned and may have noticed, of course, that we had a little incident here at Naledi Dam where a young impala actually fell into the weir that we were looking at. I know a few of you mentioned it on the Boma chat as well, and we're chatting about it and wondering about the level of involvement from a conservation and wildlife point of view at the lodges and where our cameras are. And many of you hit the nail on the head. You know, we do our best to stay out of it and let nature take its course as much as we can. But in an instance like this, where obviously something man-made like that weir has caused the impala to get stuck, even though it climbed in all on its own, in that sort of instance, we would step in. Other instances where you'd see that would be, you know, very unfortunate things like a snare. If one of the animals gets caught in a snare that is actually put in the reserve illegally, then we would step in, remove that snare, and treat that wound as best we can. But for the most part, I'll try to stay out of it. So it's really only those man-made instances, or in case of emergency. And the only other time we might see the conservation or game management team step in is for critically endangered animals like rhino. cheetah, wild dog. And even then, it's a highly debatable topic of whether or not they will get involved. But when it is a high profile animal like that, you find that the game management teams are a little bit more lenient, and we would step in to help in that case, depending on the situation, of course. But as you will see, that little impala was safely rescued from the weir itself and is now frolicking around back in the bush, a lot cooler than it was before. And the kind of thing that does happen from time to time. It's obviously quite unusual, and certainly those who've been with us for the last few years will attest to that the animals very seldom get stuck in the weirs or on any of the man-made objects in and around the cameras and water holes. But for the time being, it seems the impalas have decided it was a bit too stressful around their lady. So let's head on over to Tembe and see what we've got, who we've got around there. And we got a question from Rebecca. Do elephants flap their ears to cool off? Rebecca, that's absolutely right. They do it to cool off, and you'll see them do it gently, moving them back and forth. That is very much to cool themselves down. They have a lot of blood capillaries right near the surface of their skin, just behind the ears. You'll see often when they're actually in the water, they will often use their trunk to spray water behind the ears or fling mud just behind the ears. And in doing so, they get the area around those capillaries nice and wet. And as they sway the ears back and forth, it helps to cool them down just from the evaporation, of course. And that in turn cools that blood down a little and actually helps to cool the animal down itself. So a wonderful cooling system. Internal air conditioning, as it were. Let's see, we've got a lovely big waterbuck female. All these impala around as well. So thank you, Rebecca, for the question. And then you also asked, you noticed that a lot of the animals walk in straight lines while in groups. Like there is a ranking system, is that correct? So it's an interesting point, Rebecca. Yes, you will often see the animals walking in lines, and you'll often see them sticking to the same game paths. They'll utilize the same little path back and forth from either the waterhole or to various feeding grounds. And though you'll often have more senior or older members of a herd who will be leading the way, the main reason for the single file is more often than not they just simply prefer to walk on the pathway. It's a little bit clearer, and just like us, they prefer to not have to be too worried about tripping over a root or a stone, or even just having grass in your face as you're walking through the longer grass. So they prefer to stick to those game paths is one of the main reasons. We've got a lovely site here at Tembe. I hope that answers your question, Rebecca. Still got these beautiful waterbuck and of course all the impala in the foreground. If we listen carefully, we've got a few classic bird calls here at Tembe with our emerald spotted wood dove. Every now and again that purple crested turaco giving that raucous call. We've got our dark-capped bulbuls you can hear from time to time. Of course, our village weavers also making a racket almost non-stop. An amazing sight at Tembe. I was actually just having a look at some of our highlight videos the other day, and we went through a couple of our predators, the lions around the waterholes, and many of you would have noted that it was pretty much only around the drier season that we've seen the cats, certainly during the daytime on the cameras. And that's not uncommon in the wet season as they move off into other parts of the reserve, following the animals that can now move away from this main waterhole. But once again, as things get drier and those little pools around the reserve start to dry up, and there's only these major pools left, you'll start to see those predators coming back again and seeing them on the cameras a lot more often. But we haven't had our elephants arrive just yet. It's a little early for them, so we'll cross our fingers and hope that they come on down soon. Let's head on over to Rosie's pan for now and have a look what's around there. Still hopeful for those ellies though, keeping my eyes peeled. You always expect them to enter stage right. Okay, here we are at Rosie's. Still one of my absolute favorite spots to view. All still very quiet by the water holes. We'll just have a little pan around, see if we get lucky with anything coming down. It's an interesting call in the background there. Sound like a bird of prey. I'm not sure which one that might be. Keep our eyes out. Maybe we get lucky, get a view of it. I know a number of them have a similar sounding call. Could just be our good old yellow-billed kite. Doesn't look like anyone's around at Rosie's for now. Let's head on back to Olifants River. We might just catch the last glimpse of a hippo butt as it wanders away from us. It's just trotted off into the distance. And here he goes, sneaking through the bush. Being watched over by a baboon sitting on the fig tree. Still with that ever-present emerald-spotted wood dove call in the background. Looks like potentially that hippo may be heading off to graze, which is unusual. It's a little early for them to start heading out the water. You can see it defecating just through the gap in the tree there. One of the interesting hippo behaviors, how they will spread all that dung around on the bushes just alongside the game path that it uses to get out of the water, and it's a very common way of marking territory. That's why you never really find any piles of hippo dung. They're always spread out far and wide around the bushes next to the game paths. There's our brown-hooded kingfisher call in the background. And the woodlands kingfisher. Not too long now where I suspect we won't be hearing the woodlands anymore. They'll start making their way back up to the southern parts of Zambia and into East Africa. Of course, a summer visitor to these parts. We're just starting to see that hippo nice and clearly now, having a good feed alongside the river. I suspect that's where he'll be for the next few hours and slowly make his way in a couple of maybe 100 or 200 meters away from the water. I don't tend to go too far when there's lots of food around like this. Always a pleasure to see the hippos out the water like that. I see a couple of you mentioning we've had some little baby goslings spotted a towel. So let's head on over to Tau quick. We're running out of time for the show. I think they've just moved off camera for now, but always such nice diversity and so many different types of animals. Oh no, I see those little goslings now just in front of the Egyptian goose there. You've been seeing them fairly often in the last few weeks. These, of course, Egyptian geese. And they do actually breed all year round. There is a little bit of a peak around July, August, and September. But certainly not unusual to see little goslings this time of year. But folks, that'll be it from me and for the Boma Show this afternoon. Thank you so much for your questions and for joining us. Don't forget to join us tomorrow. As I mentioned, where Phil and I will be going through various aspects of Africam, from the production through to the cameras and how things work and how we bring the show to you. That'll be the same time tomorrow at 2:30, and then Phil's show, of course, The Hide on Thursday, also at 2:30. But from myself, it's been great hanging out with you this afternoon. I hope you enjoyed yourselves. And I'll see you all tomorrow, same time. And I hope you'll join us. But for now, enjoy the cameras, enjoy the goslings. And we'll see you all soon. Cheers for now.